I'm Connor Old, and welcome to Connor the Contrarian, a weekly podcast where I talk about movies that either the critics or the audiences didn't like that I think are actually great movies. And today, I'm going to be talking about the greatest social prank ever pulled off, all captured in a Kaufman-level meta-ness in the mockumentary, I'm Still Here. Now, before we jump into the movie, I always like to talk about the cultural landscape of the film at the time of release. This helps us understand the mindframe of society, which greatly influences those initial reviews. And by setting up this cultural landscape, I'm also setting up the movie because it relies so heavily on what is going on in Hollywood at this time, because the documentary or mockumentary focuses on Joaquin's experience during this time. This film came out in September 2010 and was a couple years removed from when Joaquin Phoenix's public meltdown, which involved him quitting acting and pursuing a rap career and sort of just completely gone crazy what everyone thought. He'd gone from this well-respected Oscar-nominated actor and flushed it down the toilet for this rap career. And people were convinced it's real. How could they not? He wasn't doing any movies, and he was going on talk shows talking about this new life choice. Then, after doing no movies for 2 years, this documentary comes out, and people still misjudged it. They weren't removed enough, and the critics were overall mixed. Plus, the box office was non-existent and garnered no appreciation from anyone because everyone was just so confused and didn't understand it. And not speaking ill, but people were confused as to the intent, which hurt the film. Some people thought it was just an elaborate social experiment, and others were genuinely concerned about his life choices and that this documentary just happened to document it in this period of time and was sort of exploiting him in that way. But I believe the former. And now, 10 years removed from the events, I think we can all realize the genius and absolute insanity of this film, which is where I came to it. I was only a child when these events were happening and knew nothing about this. I now know of Joaquin Phoenix, the great actor from masterpieces like Her and The Master. He quickly became one of my personal favorite actors, and I thought he was always wasn't as well respected as he should be, not knowing the events that this movie takes place. So when I saw this, I was completely removed from all the sort of pop culture sort of engulfment that so many people that watch and sort of consume film were in at the time. So knowing that it wasn't real, because Casey Affleck actually a couple years afterwards said that this was sort of just a whole elaborate prank, and knowing that Joaquin Phoenix would eventually come back to acting, it made the film work so much better now. So without further ado, let's talk about the movie. We open to home video footage dated February 12th, 1981. We see a young boy go to the top of a rock at a river, and we watch him for a couple minutes, until he leaps into the water, and we cut to a sequence of news footage, and late-night filling showing us in on Joaquin Phoenix before these events. He's a beloved actor. We see him even when he had Golden Globe. But then it's immediately juxtaposed with Joaquin outside smoking a cigarette, going on this really long monologue about how he feels stuck playing quote-unquote Joaquin, and he doesn't know what came first, if he was an emotional, intense, and complicated guy already, or the media told him he was that, and then he became that. It's the chicken or the egg scenario, and that the whole acting thing just feels very fraudulent, and he wants to do something that shows the public the real him. Hate him or like him, just don't misunderstand him. And this beginning speech is emblematic at understanding the film for me. It's almost like Shakespeare, where they tell you the plot of the movie up front, and he tells you he wants to do something ridiculous to make fun of the media and the obsession with these celebrities. I think he feels that way, and what he's saying has truth in it to him, absolutely, but he's also telling you that he's going to mess with those expectations Hollywood has put on him, and just how Hollywood has sort of controlled him and maybe put him into this corner of what they sort of label him as. He can now do the same and sort of reinvent himself, because ultimately he's the attraction, and wherever he goes, they will follow. Now we see his daily life and meet his assistant, Anthony, who tells us what it's like to work for Joaquin. Then we see him go to San Francisco to be a part of a theater production with other famous actors to raise money for children. We then see that Joaquin is immediately a problem. He's gone right into character. He's whispering to Danny DeVito's fill-in about how he hates acting, and even asks him why he's doing an accent when the actor's clearly not even doing an accent. And then, very offhandedly after the show, he talks to some of these news sources, and it was not a prestigious one, but he just sort of breaks the news exclusive, saying that he's retiring from acting and that this was his last performance and he's going to pursue a career in hip-hop. And he didn't warn his agent or his publicist or anyone. So everyone is freaking out, and we see a sequence of everyone calling Joaquin. But really, I mean, Joaquin's not worried at all. He's just focused on getting his album ready at his new homemade studio. Then he starts practicing as he goes to the club. And this is just this, we get the feel of the documentary because this is not rehearsed, and people were not really warned about it, I don't think. They clearly just took a camera into these clubs and started filming, and Joaquin just started rapping. And it's clear that Joaquin is not as gifted as a rapper as he is an actor, but this, like I said, this is where the style of the documentary really comes in. It's very offhand. There's isn't a lot of sort of those tripod set up traditional documentary interviews where they are interviews. It plays as more of a candid look into Joaquin's life, and this gives us the real feel that it needs. Using camera tricks like peeking into windows from outside and using quick zooms to demonstrate that this was shot from far away, that it's sort of we, the audience, are peering into it like we're not supposed to be seeing this. It gives the illusion that it's not staged, and we're getting a sort of raw, unedited look at Joaquin and the conversations he has in private. But Joaquin needs someone to produce his album to give the story a narrative driving force. They call all of the best producers in the rap game, of course, and actually they do pretty well, and it seems that P. Diddy may be willing to do it. He's in New York, and they decide to fly there in the hopes that he has some free time, so if he frees up, he can meet with Joaquin about his project. Joaquin, of course, gladly does so, and we see him fly to New York at the drop of a hat, and while he's in New York, he plays up the unhinged Joaquin that we associate celebrities are, sort of always having fun and get all the girls. We have a sequence where we realize the sort of insanity of this character, because at this point, he's a character. At least to me. He orders these 2 escorts, invites them up, starts doing coke with them, and having just a wild night. And as they wait, we find out a couple of bad news. We find that Entertainment Weekly says, and has posted a piece that says Joaquin isn't retiring from acting at all, that this is all an elaborate hoax. Of course, Joaquin is insulted. He starts going on, I risk my career, and people think it's fake, which just tells him he's really going to soak this in right away because, there is doubt as to the truth of this, so he has to really go even further. And the other piece of bad news is that Diddy isn't in New York anymore, and they came up for nothing. But if they come to Miami right now, he'll actually be able to meet him for sure. So, they have no other choice. They fly down to Miami and meet him in his hotel room. And now, when they get there, P. Diddy's caught off guard. Didn't know they were filming a documentary. And this is kind of where the brilliance of the documentary comes in, because we're in on the joke and everyone else is not. It has the feeling of a prank, but doesn't really affect anyone else in a poor way. Joaquin is destroying his own public perception, therefore he can do it. So this is sort of the debate I have with myself, is like, who is in on it and who's not? Because now we know it's fake, but really, it says we have such a super uncomfortable scene with Diddy that seems like he's not in on it, where he's just trying to suss out if really Joaquin's serious or not. He's got to make sure he's got the money. But then after we meeting Joaquin, despite being a super uncomfortable, awkward, weird interview, Joaquin's super excited. He thinks this is a big success, and even though nothing's finalized. Then we get an impressionistic sequence of Joaquin at a nightclub, getting girls to come back to his place. He's wild, and these sequences sort of give you that. He's cutting loose, and we actually don't know how much of he's enjoying this. And for me, this is really one of Joaquin's most best and probably most vulnerable characters, because the genius of the film is blurring the lines between how much of the real Joaquin we are seeing versus how much the character Joaquin. Is it all the character? Is it a little bit of Joaquin? You can't just live your life for sort of 2 years, more than 2 years, and have nothing on camera that's yourself, and not interject something that's a little bit yourself. Or maybe it's all himself, or maybe it's all a character. It's kind of the mystery of the film, which is why I think sometimes you think one way when you watch it, and then you rewatch it, and it's like, oh no, I think it's something else, which is a great sign of a great movie. Next, we see him meet with Ben Stiller, because Ben is offering him a new role in the Noah Baumbach film, Greenberg. It's an awkward scenario, because Ben isn't sure if Joaquin is faking it or not, and this is part of the move, like I said, who's in it and who's not. Joaquin calls out Ben for being sort of the fake Ben Stiller, and he gets defensive by saying, he's not the one with the t-shirt on his head. And I like to think that Ben doesn't know what's going on, but Joaquin's not interested as we transition into one of his first events in Vegas. he performs on stage at a club, and there's no subtitles, and we can barely hear what he's saying, and we just get reaction shots of the crowd, and they're not really into it. But that's not going to stop him. Then we have one of the most underrated moments in the movie. It seems like the most genuine to me, this scene, knowing that it's probably not sort of Joaquin's character. So if it is not genuine, it probably makes it Joaquin's best moment in the movie. But it's just the scene where he's talking with Casey Affleck about if animals with wings use their wings for anything but flying, and they have a funny sort of back and forth conversation about bees and their wings to do a wing dance. It just feels very authentic and allows, I think, us a little glimpse into how Joaquin's mind works. And I think this is probably the most true to Joaquin Phoenix, the person, and less so of the character. But if it's not, that makes the scene so much better because it feels so real. And the sporadic mind of Joaquin is the charm of this movie, because you legitimately don't know where he's going to go next or what he's going to do next, which is so rare in movies today. Like in this next scene where he just flies to Washington, D.C. for the inauguration of Barack Obama. But it's so last minute that they don't have a hotel, and he books a one-way ticket and then sleeps in during the inauguration and misses it, and his friends don't wake him up. And then before that, there was this scene with Edward James Olmos giving him some confusing Buddhist philosophy. I mean, we're fully into the mind of Joaquin, and it's a trip. And as much as he's the character, as much as he's the sort of the movie, I think he's also kind of directing it and sort of leading this this thing. You know, Casey Affleck actually directed this movie, but I think with the help of Antony's assistant and even him, they're sort of got this whole collaborative force. And I think this whole sequence here is like, this is what I'm thinking at all times. So it's pretty crazy. But the rap album hasn't gone away, because Diddy wants Joaquin to come in and he wants him to hear what he's got. Joaquin goes in, plays what he's recorded, and Diddy sort of lets him down nicely, saying that he has potential, but there's no way he's going to produce the album. This is a low point of the character that is Joaquin Phoenix, that the movie has built up to. He has to do press for his new movie that's coming out, and as he goes on Dave Letterman, already distraught about losing on Diddy, he wears a suit with the tie not all the way up. His hair has progressively gotten worse throughout the movie and now looks like a bird's nest, and he has a giant, huge beard. I mean, he looks like a homeless man, and goes on the Letterman show with sunglasses, and he's chewing gum. And this is really his first major public appearance in a while, and it's a complete train wreck, just as Joaquin has planned, right? The film plays this as if he just goes there and he destroys his career, but I think with multiple watches and looking back at it, it's so carefully planned. People didn't believe this was real. Everyone thought it was a hoax, and it's different when you're going from sort of your room, but now you're going to this first major public, totally, this is the Letterman show, a lot of people watch this, so this is very public. So really, he needs to go out in full character and commit to this Andy Kaufman-esque social experiment bit. And it goes terrible, which means successfully. You know, it's now because it's in the public, people think he's gone completely mental and he's having a breakdown. And on the way home from the interview, he pulls over and gets out and cries and starts saying he's a joke now and his music sucks and that, he really messed up. And we get a clip we see Ben Stiller at the Oscars making fun of him and other talk shows doing the same. And it plays not as an embarrassing moment to me, but just of a man sort of sitting back, the Oz behind the curtain, who has pulled off the biggest prank in the world, and everyone bought it. It gives me sort of a sense of joy, because we're in on it the entire time, and I have this stupid grin on my face because we're in on the joke, and because I wasn't there, I didn't fall for it. So sort of a superior sort of way you're sort of laughing at it, because we're in on the joke. And now he has one final performance that is really just beautifully staged. We see him waiting on the wings, and we just hold on him. He's not moving on the beat at all, and we're just seeing him wait for his turn. Still, Joaquin is the emotional, intense, complicated guy we know him to be. And in this last performance, he's pouring his heart out on the stage more than anything. It's the inside Llewyn Davis moment where we realize, it's a tough role, and sometimes passion and talent can't get you all of the way. And for the narrative of the film, it's heartbreaking. And the film, now we realize, needs to wrap up its narrative journey. And then he gets heckled and gloats about his successes as sort of a defense mechanism. And then eventually, after more heckling, he jumps down on stage and starts to beat the guy up. And the character is done within this Hollywood life, and the real Joaquin is done with the bit. It was successful. It's done. So the Joaquin Phoenix character, his bit was successful. He's tricked the world, and the character now being done with his Hollywood life after destroying on Letterman, his sort of arc is done as well. And finally, the parallel goals of the two characters of the film, the character and Joaquin artist, have finally lined up. He needs to go into hiding, and we see him in Panama, and he's in the river at the beginning of the film. The opening now makes sense. He's jumping into the water like he's jumping into the hoax. And in the end, we just see him walking through the water as he's almost reveling in the joke. For too long, the sequence is about 5 minutes, and then the movie ending without closure. Is he ever going to leave the river? Is he ever going to leave this persona behind? And then the film ends. I don't know where it really points out that this isn't real, because the film lures you in with real things that could be real at so many times that you're always questioning to yourself, is this real? Would Joaquin Phoenix actually do this to himself? Would you tank your own career? The pain of embarrassment of going out on a limb to pursue it and having everyone laugh at you, it's understandable if this was real. To always be harassed and seen in the spotlight is hard, which is why so many other actors have breakdowns for real. Because we're not supposed to go through this. And that's why it's easy to understand why the movie failed. It's easy to market an action movie because people know what it is, but how do you market this? It's not a flat-out mockumentary, or is it a documentary, or, no one knows what it actually is saying. The illusion of the film is that it's not pure fiction. I mean, it is pure fiction. The character has an arc, it's structured and fabricated to have the breakdown and the low point of this character eventually sort of the high point and the climax of the movie. It says something about us, where we love to watch someone so well beloved crumble before us. And celebrities constantly have breakdowns, and the media puts them up as if sort of zoo animals where we can judge them from the cheap seats. And Joaquin manufactured his own demise and used it for art's sake. He tricked the entire world and brought them into this elaborate game, and now looking back on it, it's hard not to see the media and everyone who sort of bought it as these sort of silly sheep, fooled at their own game. It's a brilliant satire that needed to be released when it was released, but can only be appreciated for years to come. It plays as a brilliant time capsule of the period of Hollywood obsession that still occurs today, but that the zoo was controlled by the animal the people are watching. A masterpiece and a transcendent experience I have never seen before, and so risky I don't think we'll ever see again. I'm Connor Roll, and make sure you rate and review the podcast on iTunes. It really helps. I also have a YouTube channel. Just search Connor Roll, and you'll find other film-related content, including a series that I'm doing right now called Old on Old, where I look at a classic movie I've never seen before and talk about why it's a classic. That's about it. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Until next time, stay tuned.